In 1877, a silver prospector named Ed Schieffelin left Camp Huachuca, a desolate, newly garrisoned army post in southeastern Arizona. The soldiers who garrisoned this outpost warned Ed to not head towards the Dragoon Mountains, because this was Indian country. They told him that if he did so, he would be putting a tombstone over his own grave. Ed ignored the advice he was given. After spending months looking for silver, he struck it rich only to find that he didn't have enough money left to file a claim. After talking a friend, William Griffith, into paying for the legal paperwork that was needed to stake this claim, Ed, his brother Al, and his friend William, established the Tombstone Gold and Silver Mining Company. On June 17, 1879, Ed showed up in Tucson driving a wagon with the first load of silver from his mine. The load was valued at $18,744, which in today's currency would be over $500,000. When word got out about Ed's silver strike, people rushed to Arizona, anxious to stake out their mining claims. Okay. So they didn't precisely rush. The Arizona territory was hot and dry. Clashes between the Apache and prospectors had occurred. Just 1 year earlier, Ed had been with a group of prospectors when they were attacked by a raiding party. One prospector and an unknown number of Apache were killed. Still, the idea of striking it rich was a powerful draw. By the time of the 1880 census, there were 973 people living in the newly established town of Tombstone. By 1900, Tombstone had a population of 1,875 residents. All of this wealth generated a certain amount of lawlessness. Records from the Cochise County Coroner's Office from the early 1880s to 1901 show that 480 people died over a 20-year period. Only 43 of these deaths were from natural causes. This is not to say that everyone else died in gunfights. Some died in mine explosions. One was run over by a train. There were a number of unfortunate suicides. One man was killed when he was hit on the head with a rock and then kicked in the groin. A few are even said to have drowned, even though Cochise County was nearly all desert. There were also problems with drugs. Some died from morphine overdoses. At least one person died from alcohol poisoning. Others died from misadventure. Alcohol, gambling, and guns were not a good combination for some people. Some were killed by claim jumpers who were stealing a mining claim. Still others were killed by murderous psychopaths, who found a perverse satisfaction in gunning down anyone who annoyed them. In 1879, the Earp brothers arrived in Tucson, prior to taking a stage to Tombstone. Although folklore says that Wyatt Earp was a deputy U.S. Marshal, according to the district clerk's office in Tucson, it was his brother Virgil who took the oath of office. Virgil was sworn in as a deputy U.S. Marshal on November 27, 1879. When Virgil traveled to Tombstone to assume his duties, he was joined by his brothers Wyatt and Morgan, who had planned to seek their fortunes by mining silver. Mining was tiring and backbreaking work. To mine silver, miners first excavated a hole using a pickaxe. They then used dynamite to make the hole bigger.
Fire in the hole!
After removing the broken rock, they'd examine the rocks for silver ore. If they didn't find any silver, they'd repeat the process. Over time, a mine shaft could extend hundreds of feet into the rock. In September of 1880, Doc Holliday and Big-Nosed Kate arrived in Tombstone. The two were friends of Wyatt Earp, having met him a few years earlier in Fort Griffin. Known as Doc by his friends, Doc Holliday was a real doctor, having graduated from the Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery. Big-Nosed Kate was born in Hungary as Mary Catherine Haroni. In 1862, her father was appointed as the personal physician of Emperor Maximilian I of Mexico. Just 3 years later, the emperor was overthrown. Kate and her family fled to the United States. Shortly thereafter, Kate's mother died. After her father passed away just 3 months later, Kate was placed in foster care. Since she didn't like being in foster care, she ran away, eventually becoming a dance hall girl and prostitute in Dodge City. In time she moved to Fort Griffin, Texas, where she met Doc Holliday. On the evening of October 28, 1880, a drunken outlaw named Curly Bill was staggering around a street in Tombstone firing his pistols in the air. When the city marshal, Fred White, approached him, Curly shot and killed Marshal White. He was subsequently pistol-whipped by Wyatt Earp, who had observed the entire incident. Since Curly belonged to a gang of some 200 outlaws who were known as the Cowboys, Virgil swore his brothers Wyatt and Morgan in as special deputies. When Curly Bill came to trial, he claimed that the shooting had been accidental and was acquitted by the circuit judge. There are those who say that the spirit of Marshal White is one of the many ghosts who still haunt the street of Tombstone. In an effort to reduce gun violence, the city council passed an ordinance that became effective on April 19, 1881.
Section 1. It is hereby declared unlawful to carry in the hand or upon the person or otherwise any deadly weapon within the limits of said city of Tombstone, without having first obtained a permit in writing.
The problem between the Earps and the Cowboys was highlighted in the local paper, the Tombstone Epitaph. On September 16, 1881, 30 days before the gunfight at the OK Corral, the Tombstone Epitaph wrote about the cowboy nuisance problem in Arizona.
How must such men feel to be robbed by a hand of thieves and cutthroats, who take pride in announcing to the public that they are rustlers? Where is the Teamsters' protection? Can you find any officers who will follow, arrest, and recover your property? It has come to pass in this county that life and personal property are unsafe, even in the town of Tombstone. It seems as if one of the leading industries is to be destroyed. There is not a Teamster today who is not in fear and dread of the Cowboys, or so-styled rustlers depriving him of his hard earnings. If you can, I would like to see him. These chaps seem to have no difficulty in evading the law, while others, not inclined to work, daily join the band, and they are increasing fast in numbers. Our town is filled with spies watching every move of the officers and imparting their information to their comrades. Men who come to examine different mines outside of town, when they learn how the Cowboys stand fellows up, do not wish to run such risks. They quietly take the road they came and get back to civilization as soon as possible.
Things came to a head between the Earps and a group of cowboys on the afternoon of October 26, 1881. After having learned that there were members of this group who had refused to surrender their weapons, the Earp brothers, accompanied by Doc Holliday, decided that they had to enforce the city ordinance for not carrying weapons within the town limits. The outlaws in question were at a vacant lot behind the OK Corral.
Here, disarm you. Throw up your hands. Oh, not what I want. Cut.
The gun battle between the Earps and the Cowboys left Billy Clanton and the McClory brothers dead. Virgil, Morgan, and Doc Holliday were wounded. The day after the shooting, the coroner opened a formal inquest that would lead to a hearing before the Justice of the Peace. The testimony of the surviving cowboy differed from that of the Earps and Doc Holliday. Although the judge censured Virgil Earp, he found insufficient cause for the defendants to be tried for murder.
I cannot resist the conclusion that the defendants were fully justified in committing these homicides,
concluded the judge at the end of the trial. While playing pool on March 18, 1882, at Campbell and Hatch's saloon in Tombstone, Morgan was gunned down by Ike Clanton and 4 cowboys. After burying his brother, Wyatt, Virgil, Doc Holliday, and 3 other gunslingers hunted down and killed the 5 cowboys. After having avenged Morgan's death, the Earps and Doc Holliday left Tombstone in April of 1882. Although the death of so many of the more able gunmen in the Cowboys metaphorically broke the back of this gang, with people being people, there were still killings in Tombstone, albeit at a greatly diminished rate. In 1882 at the Birdcage Theater, two prostitutes named Gold Dollar and Margarita got into an argument over the affections of a high-stakes gambler named Billy Milgreen. When the pushing and shoving turned into an open fight, Gold Dollar pulled out a knife and repeatedly stabbed Margarita. As Margarita lay dying on the floor, her murderer fled and ditched her weapon. Without a murder weapon or any eyewitness account regarding what had actually happened, Gold Dollar was acquitted. It would not be until 100 years later that the knife would be found. This murder weapon is now on display at the Birdcage Theater. The Birdcage Theater operated as a theater from 1891 to 1892. During the production of the HMS Pinafore, the actress who played Cousin Hebe was Josephine Sarah Marcus, the woman who would eventually become Wyatt Earp's wife. The crowd that the theater performed for was a rough group. During one production, when a member of the audience decided to drape one of his legs over the railing of his booth, the people who were seated in an adjoining booth asked him to remove his leg. When the men ignored them, Buckskin Frank Leslie drew his gun and shot off the heel of the miner's boot. As true professionals, the show went on with nary an actor or actress missing a line. The theater closed when the silver mines closed. During its 2 years of operation, 26 people died in the premises from murder, shootouts, and suicides. One of the interesting stories about the Birdcage Theater is the story of the White Lady. The White Lady is a ghost who is typically seen coming down the stairs. The woman is wearing a long dress and a bonnet. The fact that she wore a bonnet is important because only respectable women wore bonnets. Since the Birdcage was a place of ill repute, no respectable woman is said to have ever set foot within this establishment while it was operating as a theater. In point of fact, the original owners once tried to host a ladies' night. This practice was discontinued after nobody came. The staff who work at the Birdcage think that this ghost may have arrived when the owner purchased the tombstone hearse that is on exhibit behind the stage. This spirit appears to be a residual ghost who does the same thing over and over again without ever interacting with the living. During the 1930s, the Birdcage operated as a coffee shop. During the 1940s, it was a souvenir shop. Both staff and customers have claimed to have seen people in 19th-century clothing up in the booths. Some have smelled cigarette smoke even though there is no smoking on the premises. Bellowing laughter has been heard from the theater after it has been closed for the day. The tinkling sound of a phantom piano has also been heard. Some 250 people were buried in Boot Hill Cemetery before the cemetery was closed to new burials in 1884. The cowboys who were killed in the shootout at the OK Corral are buried in this graveyard. Many of the grave markers are listed as being unknown because it wasn't common for people to carry personal identification during the 1880s. In 1996, someone took what would become one of the most famous ghost pictures that has ever been taken of Boot Hill. Although the photographer has claimed that no one else was in the picture with the reenactor, one can clearly see the upper torso of a cowboy standing in the background. Blake Smith, who produces and hosts Monster Talk, an official podcast of Skeptic Magazine, thinks that this picture was staged by using a half mannequin. What do you think? Was this picture a hoax? Did it really show a ghost? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Here are two other pictures of a possible Boot Hill ghost that were taken by a woman named Juanita. As with the other photographer, she claims that there was nobody else who was around when she took these pictures. What do you think? Are these real or are they fake? In 2013, a visitor to Tombstone named Justine Nunes used her cell phone to record these two clips that were then uploaded to YouTube. The first shows her husband lying in the street, but when she looked beyond her husband, she saw what appeared to be the pale spectral image of a little girl. In another picture, you can see her husband leaning forward in the bottom right-hand corner, but if you look left, there appears to be a woman wearing an old-fashioned hat, who is peering up at Justine. What do you think? Were these pictures of ghosts or were they just tricks of the light? This picture of a possible ghost was taken at the Buford House. The Buford House was built in 1880 by a mining executive named George Washington Buford. During their time in Tombstone, they lost 3 of their 7 children to disease. Guests who have stayed in this house have claimed to have heard the shrill laughter of children echoing throughout the house while late at night. One of these guests is said to have been the actor, John Wayne. One of the previous owners, Catherine Farrell, claims that one night as she was laying in bed, a cold hand slipped under the covers to touch her leg. As a result of this experience, she began sleeping with the lights on. So what do you think? Did any of these stories resonate with you? Do ghosts really exist? Please share your thoughts in the comments below.
If you liked this video and would like to see more content, please click on the like and subscribe buttons.